One of the biggest reasons to believe in God is the scientific method. Now, you might be wondering, why is this the case? Or you might even say something like, hasn't science shown that there's no need for God? Well, let's talk about the main things the scientific method rests on. There's three main things that the scientific method is based on. Number one, the universe can be understood. Number two, we can understand it. And number three, it's good for us to understand it. If you don't believe at bottom that the universe is rational, then you're not going to spend years of your life gathering data, figuring out its laws. If you don't believe that humans are capable of understanding the universe, why waste your time trying? And if you don't believe it's good to understand the universe, why would you want to? So we have intelligibility, the universe can be understood; capability, we can understand it; and desirability, we want to understand it. These are the three key elements of the scientific method. They all have to be in place for science to get off the ground. Now, there was a time when the vast majority of people did not believe these things. The scientific revolution took place in the 16th and 17th centuries, and it was led by Christians. Now, when Nicolaus Copernicus was asked why did he start this revolution, his response was, and I quote, "to know the mighty works of God, to comprehend his wisdom, power, and majesty," end quote. When Tycho Brahe was asked why did he spend so much time studying the stars, his response was, and I quote, "those who study the stars have God for a teacher," end quote. When Galileo Galilei was asked why did he decide to give birth to modern observational astronomy, his response was, and I quote, "I do not believe that the same God who has endowed us with sense and reason and intellect has intended to forego their use. When I reflect on so many profoundly marvelous things that persons have grasped, saw, and done, I recognize even more clearly that human intelligence is the work of God and one of the most excellent," end quote. Rene Descartes said, and I quote, "I see plainly that the certainty and truth of all knowledge depends uniquely on my awareness of the true God to such an extent that I was incapable of perfect knowledge about anything else until I became aware of him," end quote. When Robert Boyle was asked what drove his research, his response was, and I quote, "the vastness of beauty and orderliness of heavenly bodies, the excellent structure of animals and plants and other phenomena of nature justly induce an intelligent, unprejudiced observer to conclude a supreme, powerful, just, and good author," end quote. When Isaac Newton was asked what he thought of atheism, his response was, and I quote, "atheism is so senseless and odious to mankind that it never had many professors," end quote. So why were Christians the pioneers of the scientific revolution? Well, when we ask the people who did it why, the response is that the universe was created by a rational being, and that since humans were created in the image of this rational being, we can understand the universe, and that by setting out to understand it, we're worshiping God. Now, if we're being honest, atheists would have been the last people to start a scientific revolution. Why is that, though? Well, let's consider a few things here. Anyone can do science now because we all accept the scientific method. We all believe the universe can be understood and that we can understand it and that it's good for us to understand it. But the pioneers of the scientific revolution already believed these things before they set out to prove them. They believed them based on their theology. And then they came up with a method of proving them, and that method became the scientific method. It was their belief in God that led them to the scientific method. Now let's imagine you're an atheist before the scientific method was developed. Would you have any reason to think that the universe is governed by neat little mathematical equations? No, of course not. It wouldn't make any sense to say that a falling rock is going to obey an equation. A rock doesn't have a will. It can't obey anything. So it would seem intelligibility goes out the window. So what about capability? Why would an atheist think human beings are capable of figuring out the laws of nature before the scientific revolution? Even if you so happen to think that there were laws of nature, which as an atheist I doubt you would, why would you think that you could discover them? You're not made for that sort of thing. You're not made for anything, right? You don't know how you got here, and there's no reason to think that you're capable of figuring out how you got here. So you would be trapped in a kind of bubble. And what about desirability? Let's suppose for the sake of argument that you believe there were laws of nature, which is unlikely since you're an atheist, and that you believed human beings could discover these laws, which is also unlikely since you're an atheist. Why would you want to? Sure, it might make sense to seek knowledge that has a practical benefit, like growing crops or something, because it's for survival. But what about all the knowledge that has nothing to do with mere survival? What is the justification for it? The point is, all of these things fit very nicely on a Christian worldview, because God's Word teaches very clearly that the universe is rational and that it's ordered and that we are made in His image. So the logic of the pioneers of the scientific revolution was that God is rational, so therefore He created a rational universe, so it's understandable, and since we are made in His image, we must be capable of understanding it. And that's exactly what they proved by developing the scientific method. They proved what the Bible already makes abundantly clear, and that's why the scientific method is one of the biggest reasons to believe in God. Well, guys, that's the video, so let me know what you think, and remember to like and subscribe.